And thank you, Lukayi, for your warm welcome. Once again, my name is Atkwasa Rita, and I'm a member of Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. This is my first time to vie for active political leadership, and I do sit on the committees of trade, tourism, and industry, and climate change in my country. But I'm also an activist for what I've done all my life, working with women, girls, communities, and I'm privileged to have worked from the grassroots to the higher levels. And I'm an active member of the Gender is My Agenda campaign, the Precincts of the African Union. Welcome to you all, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and other pronouns that I may not be able to elaborate. Here we are today. What a good day for us to be given an opportunity by UN Women to be able to sit and talk about activism to end violence against women and girls in our cultures, and to appreciate each one of you for putting in this time. I would also want to re-echo that our conversation today joins many other voices around the world. We are active in the 16 days of activism that are set to give us rather a more heightened space to talk about how possible, when, what strategies can we be able to employ to end violence against women and girls. And I'm very sure where you are in your different countries, this time we are around, there has been heightened engagement. Of course, during the lockdown and COVID, we lost time about that, but also lots of things happened that really further entrenched violence against women and girls. Talk about teenage pregnancies, talk about heightened hunger and insecurity, talk about lots of violations that happened as people were closed in their homes. And gender-based violence indeed remains one of the most forms of discrimination that has entrenched itself in society and a pervasive human rights violations. The numbers are overwhelming, the consequences are overwhelming, but from where we sit, we all continue to do our small things. Activism is about, you speak about it, you do something about it, and you're able to defend women's rights wherever you are. Welcome. I would like also to briefly introduce the members of the panel, distinguished members that are privileged to host this moment. I have Honorable Ava Gavar. She's a lawyer and a member of the African Committee of Experts of the Rights and Welfare of the Child. If I introduce you, you can take a minute to wave at the audience so that they are able to link the name to the face. Is Honorable Ava Gafar with me here? Please do wave on your camera. Okay, if not yet, may I then introduce Miss Omaima Amin El Mahdi.
I'm right here. I thought you could see me.
Oh yes, good to see you, and you're most welcome.
Honorable MP.
Yes, she is a member and a program manager of the National Sudan Women's Association. You are most welcome to be part of this panel and to share with us your wide experience. I also have Miss Rebecca Makwele Mulenga. Miss Rebecca.
Good morning.
Oh, it is you. Good to see you. Yeah, she's a lawyer and a child rights activist, including GBV and child marriages. What a formidable panel that I have this moment. And here we go. Could we meet Pastor John Sandera?
Hello.
Hello, Pastor.
Yeah,
yes.
I think I'm the only odd woman out there.
No, you are not odd man. No, you're actually more or less a majority.
Thank you.
Yeah, you a senior pastor with full gospel churches of Kenya, Nairobi. They
Yes.
could be everywhere around the world. So you have a majority voice.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then finally, may I also briefly introduce Neoma Albert Benson.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
How good to see you, Neoma. She is the chair of the Civil Society and Regional Reference Group of the Sprout Initiative Africa Regional Program. Much, much welcome. And I would also like to emphasize that this talk is open, should be interactive. It is a dialogue. And I would like to, yes, be very democratic and invite my ready first speaker to answer some of the questions or to give your opening remark. Democratic and open dialogue. Okay, may I then call upon Honorable Ava Gava.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Honorable MP. Good morning, colleagues. We are speaking on around issues of gender-based violence, basically, and I would begin from a note that would appear kind of bleak, whereby the state is not very cognizant of gender-based violence. I'm speaking from an African context, coming from the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, where the state is not completely cognizant of gender-based violence. And so even under our legislations, you find issues of gender-based violence lumped under generic issues like assault and other criminal offenses, not giving recognition to it as an offense. And then in the concept note, there is also an intersection with disability. And unfortunately, that is also a sector that is not well recognized or well systematized. And so the intersection between gender-based violence or violence against children and disability is very deep. It's very deep. And so there is need for more understanding of it. There is need for more recognition to know. And so in the first place, for me, I put a lot of that responsibility on the states, where we need to have a baseline, a background of what it is, of what it is, and then to have data, to have statistics on the prevalence of this phenomenon, so that we begin to bring policy and programs around stopping them. And so for me, in dealing with these issues, we first of all have to call for more recognition and more action by states through budget provisions to deal with this, and then to recognize the intersections that exist between them. And there's also need on the part of women groups at a time like this, when we are doing the 16 days of activism, to synergize. There's need to build a very strong synergy, as we already have in many situations. We have strong synergies working, and so there is need to continue to work together. And a very important point would be to empower survivors to be able to talk. It's very useful when we hear the stories of survivors from them, to hear survivors, to hear from them, and be able to amplify their voices, to give a very wide reach to experiences, to life experiences of people who are survivors of violence, of girls who are survivors of violence and who are going through disability, who are going through extreme vulnerable conditions. It should be interesting and very helpful to amplify their voice when we empower them to speak out, when they know their rights, when they know they have a right, and there's a responsibility that is owed to them. So it now takes, to me, the burden back to the state actors, Now that there is increasing awareness on these issues, it also raises the stakes for more and more response, for more and more responsive actions on behalf of duty bearers, on behalf of role players. I will hear from colleagues too from this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ava, for opening up the stage for us and very pertinent issues that you have raised, the recognition, especially of women, women groups be able to fully participate. You equally emphasize the issue for the corrective voice, the issue to empower survivors, but also most importantly, the issue about investment. I would also like to inform my panelists that beware that you are allowed. Please do write down your follow-up questions. If you have any interjection at the right time, we would be able to give you time to also contribute on some of the issues that the colleagues at the panel will have highlighted. Now we come to the youth dividend. You know it very well that globally today, the biggest numbers of our populations, almost in most of the countries, especially in Africa, are young people, and more so young women. But also that 1 in 3 women are faced with violence or gender-based violence, and usually a majority of those are young women. So therefore, allow me to fly over to Rebecca. And Rebecca, as a young woman, please share with us, what are the 3 main things you believe senior activists and others should learn from youth movements, from young women-led movements against GBV that you would like us not to miss, to be able to capture and possibly integrate in the various ways and strategies that we do put efforts to end violence against women and girls?
Good morning again. So just to make mention that a lot of things equally work almost the same, but probably a keynote difference would be the style in which our elders do their activism. I believe young people need beyond the traditional way of doing your awareness programs. It's important that we integrate a style that is kind of like new. Young people want to be enticed in a way that they are able to actually relate. The only problem that I see with our elders in relation to their advocacy is that they tend to want to parent as they are trying to do their advocacy. Young people are not looking for parenting. They're looking for a place they can relate. So number one, I feel we must change our approach in the style in which we try to do our advocacy. Can we bring in things that are trending? Can we bring in ways in which young people will feel like they're still talking to a person who understands the millennials? Can we have people that are willing to at least research on the new generation and like coming in with advocacy that looks like you're actually parenting them? And the second thing I would actually want to mention apart from style is to try and remove the cultural barrier that has been existing. You know, for the longest time, what has stopped us from having an impact is the aspect that young women are always of the notion that culture has divided us. So like, for example, I'll give a practical example. The relationship I would have with my mother wouldn't exist that much because even the communication becomes a problem because of the cultural barriers that have always existed. So if you're going to bring an adult or a woman who is in a much advanced age to come and share awareness with young people, it's important to remove the cultural barrier, the aspect that makes a woman feel like I'm talking to my aunt, but in this case, can they relate at that level? The cultural barriers that have been existing, such as you can't speak directly to your auntie or your mother, you have to call, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Zambia, it's so strong that young women cannot speak directly to their mothers, for example. They have to go through their aunties to make their voices heard or amplified. So the approach that would probably work is to try and remove the aspect of the cultural barrier that has been existing between the older women and the younger women. In this case, trying to integrate them, make them feel more inclusive, and not to lose the aspects of culture, respect, the approach that everybody traditionally uses. Finally, I feel the aspect that we must work on is communication. Young people want to work with what's trending. Young women want to hear new things that they relate to. So if your style is wrong to start with, if the cultural barrier is still existing, and worse off, your communication is also not effective, there you will have a problem with the young people because they won't be interested. Young women are so much of a stereotype that you don't even have to do a proper survey in order for you to know the response that you will get in a certain awareness program. You may need to just change and improve and try and work with what's trending. So if you try and work with what's trending, your communication becomes more effective because you capture the minds of the young people. GBV cannot be approached the way we have always been approaching it traditionally. We may want to go beyond the postings that we do. We may want to use videos instead. We may want to use realistic approaches that affect young people. Because initially, we've never heard of GBV at the highest level years, maybe let me say 10 years ago. It has become very prevalent in the 5 years. So it means that young women do not know much about it and they don't want to talk about it. So if you're going to capture the minds of the young ladies and the young women, you may want to work on the style in which you're advocating. You want to work on the cultural barrier. You also want to work on the communication methods. Make sure whatever you're doing is something that will attract the minds of the young people. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Rebecca is a lawyer, a child rights activist, and has great experience in GBV and averting child marriages, and works closely with Women and Law in Southern Africa. She has worked with World Vision and Women in Law Development in Africa. Wow, like a young person she's advocating for. She uses social media to send awareness on the dangers of sexual abuse, child marriages, GBV, and also has had latest intervention of translation of posters to local languages, such as Bemba, Nyanja, as you hear, that she is from Zambia. Very, very fundamental. She is telling us, please, can you act like nursery teachers? You can imagine, nursery teachers, they even work to their 60s and 70s, but they will be like nursery kids. That if you are going to work with young people, can you be like them? Can you try to understand them to be able to reduce the cultural gap? What is trending? What is the language they speak? So that even if you are an adult reaching out to them, you are young in spirit and at heart. Thank you very much, Rebecca. And now I will just take my flight and then to Omaima Amin El Mardi. Are you there, Amini?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay.
So I would like to ask, with your many years of experience, of course, notably role modeling for women that you have played in your country, in Sudan, in advocacy, and of course, faced with the data that show globally how women, we have got here because of the efforts, especially in activism, in advocacy, for policy influence, for cultural changes. So would you say the data is accurate for our continent, or there is something we are missing?
Okay, thank you very much for organizing this meeting and also for inviting me to talk about this issue. Sudan, like any other country in Africa, we have this problem of
Sole, she seems to be having internet connection issues.
Can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear?
I do hear you.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is that in Sudan, like any other country in Africa continent, that we have this problem we are facing through decades of GBV, or actually violence against women and girls. In Sudan, you know that we have conflict all over the country. We have 7 states from out of 18 states. We have conflict, and we all know that women and girls who are mostly affected by these consequences of conflict, displacement, and all these issues. One of them is violence in all forms, in conflict zone, in other ways. Also tradition and norms also. In Sudan, unfortunately, we have this norms and tradition also, like trying to find justification for violence against women. In Sudan, we have a problem with having our policies, our laws and regulation. Most of them are drawn from, they call it Sharia law. Sharia law, in some articles, it allow that violence against women, because it is a right that men can practice violence in different forms. Unfortunately, women themselves sometimes accept it because it is related to religious. So they will accept it. It's okay, no problem. A man or whatever, who brother, husband, practice any kind of violence against women, they say it is okay because they have justification. Now we think that this issue of violence against women and UBV is in Sudan are escalating. This issue, instead of being reduced due to this advocacy by civil society organization, especially with women organization during last few decades. But I think we notice that this problem is escalating, and especially during last year. Last year we have a military coup, and we think that this violence against women is increasing. In you cannot imagine that on daily basis. Each organization working with has in constituency, they have like 1 or 2 or 3 cases have been reported to them, and have to address it. So I think in our country that we don't have actual data, because when we're working in an issue or address this issue, we're trying to address it in a way of rights, awareness, but actually we're not conducting like research to know the exact number of women and girls subject to this. And because also the virus is not only this kind of rape, you have different kinds, as in many countries, like child marriage, FGM. You have FGM still is practiced in many areas in Sudan, even in area where there some people are educated, women are educated, but they still practice this kind of FGM. In addition to other kind of poverty. See, poverty is one of the issues that we are facing. We are subject to violence by the forces, what we call it, like police, law enforcement bodies, the first who practice violence against women. And if we are going to make sure that the how, to what extent this phenomena is widely spread, in order to have data, concrete data, say this is that is not can be available, or because most of the civil society organizations cannot and have the resources, they cannot have the time, or sometimes they cannot access information, because the civil society themselves, they are facing problem because there are so many laws and regulations that sometimes hinder civil society organization to work freely in order to reach some cases, to some areas, to collect data, to collect information, to know about these cases. So many cases now it happened, but no one can talk about them. It is not known to people. And in 2 months ago, we have conflict in an area called Blue Nile, where is The conflict between two tribes resulted in displacement, and women are mostly affected, but no one can reach there because it is not allowed them by security body to reach there to collect data to know the situation of women there and what they are suffering. So I think what we need really, what we need to ensure that we are going to conduct an advocacy or have advocacy plan based on a data or for I think this issue needs collective work through all African because sometimes civil society in one country they not have the capacity to do these researches, to collect information, to know about what is happening and what if the survivor is survivor of violence. Where are they? They have find support. They have any kind of access to help by these other bodies like health. They have laws that about the laws that they are supporting them. So I think the problem is bigger than civil society in one. We need a collective work to address this issue, information and data available to us to ensure that what kind of advocacy and to advocate with whom and for whom and who is want to send our message to them. So I think the collective and networking among us is very essential for us in this time. Thank you.
You're muted, Rita.
Oh, thank you. I mean, you suggest that we need to generate more evidence in terms of data, and you go ahead to say that the problem for gender-based violence is bigger than civil society, but also you seem to share light that most of the numbers go not captured. Do you have any suggestions how you think who should come in to be able to assist to generate this data? And then my other question is, you mentioned that there are traditional norms that have exacerbated violence against women in Sudan. Could you also share with us what are some of those norms? For those who are listening to us, they may be able to understand you better and also pick some awareness on some of those aspects.
Okay. Yeah, the norms, especially as I said, because tradition in Sudan, maybe direct or life more even than laws and regulations. Because Sudan is very traditional, very conservative society. Because this society where men dominating the life and women, usually are vulnerable and marginalized economically, politically, socially. Women are vulnerable. They have no any power. They have no any kind of capacity to say or decide on everything. As I said, in Sudan, we have this kind of child marriage. If I imagine that a girl can be married at 12 or 13 years. So they have they cannot decide even on herself to say no or to accept or whatever. Also education. Most of the families on most of the areas, people prefer to send boys to school and they can stay at home. They cannot go to school because sometimes of poverty, sometimes because it is not necessary there to have to go to school. It is better to marry and stay at home or to help her mother in house work because this is much important than go to school. Also, as I said, because most of our laws are drawn from Sharia law, which is based on Islamic religion. Even if it is not true, they said that have this article or code from Sharia law the men have the right, like to beat. And they say that it's his right. As I said, the problem is that because women, or because most of the people in Sudan are believers and have this very deep religion aspect on them, women sometimes accept it. It's okay, yes, it is right for men to beat them. Because the husband has the right, the brother has the right, the father has the right to beat and to practice any kind of things. He believes that it is his right to do it on women. Banning him from going to school, to marry them, to the men that they can choose the family, by the family, not the girl has no right to say also. So the tradition that because as I said, it's now forming our life in Sudan, and women cannot go out or cannot oppose these things because they are not aware. They have no kind of education. Most of women are illiterate, and when a girl is married at 13 years, you can know, imagine she cannot have the decision to just to obey the husband and the family and to be part of this family community, when she has just do what the husband or even the husband family are impose on her. Because if the girl can have education, access education, maybe she increased her awareness about many things. She knows that there are something called human rights. They have family, gender equality, and all these issues. But unfortunately, because as I said, the community is not not sometimes not marginalizing, but imposing this kind of unconsciously this violence against women and girls from very early years. When the girl grow up, she can't find herself. She cannot say anything. She cannot decide for anything because this is the condition, this is the tradition, this is the norms, and accept it. And the problem is also when she have children, she have girls, she trying to make her children practice the same thing because they brought on them because for the tradition that which she has been brought on or have been told them that this is men, this is the women, and this is the right of men, this is the right of women. So I
Thank
think
you very much, Amin.
Across generation, we have this problem. Okay.
Thank you very much, Amin, for that elaborate explanation for us to understand the situation in Sudan, but just not for Sudan, but relates to many other countries. And Amin has worked in various areas of research, of a financial officer for the Gender Center for Research and Training. And right now she's the program manager for the National South Sudanese platform. So she highlighted very critical things, especially raising the issue of current crises to do with conflicts and emergencies that do intensify violence against women and girls. And I think one of the factors she highlighted is to do with the law enforcement officers who are seen to directly inflict or have violence against women and girls as they conduct their duties. And I think the issue to do with enforcement agencies, they could be military, they could be police, they could be any kind. And I think we have seen recently the riots that were going on, in Iran, that have even led to the disbandment of the moral police department of that very country. But also highlighting that the issue to do with power and control is very, very fundamental in dealing with violence against women and girls. Who decides? Who has the power to make the decision? Whether a girl goes to school, whether a girl goes for a meeting, whatever direction of life a lady or a girl or a woman may choose to take in path. Thank you very much, Amina, for that explanation. And crisis says conflicts remain one of the critical avenues through which violence against women is exacerbated. May I now welcome the senior pastor, John Sandera. But as he comes, remember that as panelists, please do keep your follow-up questions after I will give a moment for you to be able to raise anything that you may want to seek clarity on for your benefit, but also for the benefit of the audience that we are communicating to. Let's speak about African Union. Let's speak about regional structures. They could be trade structures. They could be peace structures. It could be IGAD. It could be ECOWAS. It could be the East African Community. It could be SADC, mention it, where for a couple of years, different regional bodies have aimed at gender transformative approaches. And through understanding and experiences, their attitudes, roles, and responsibilities, especially for men and boys, and how it influences behavior in society and policy making, especially that, you know, majority of our countries, majority of our political decision-making bodies, we have men as the majority who sit at these tables. Of course, as women, we are trying to get there. Therefore, Pastor John Sandera, in that regard, what do you think are the mechanisms which must be put in place to strengthen the work with men and boys as allies for gender equality and women's empowerment, including their participation in continental men's coalitions to end violence against women? Pastor Sandera.
Thank you very much, Rita, and all the panelists. I'm excited and delighted to be here, even to be part of this big program whereby we are thinking of how can we involve men into fighting this monster called gender-based violence. And one of my thinking is that it is possible. It is possible. And I think one of the areas that where we should start from is for us who are in this war to change our attitude. Changing our attitude means like we cannot win this battle alone. Let's also have men and boys as stakeholders. So we cannot do it alone. And changing that attitude also, we'll be able to bring them on board and now ask them to help us so that together we can fight. Because as Martin Luther said, that we must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. So we can also perish together as fools, but we can also learn to work together as brothers and sisters, as husband and wives, as mothers and sons, because God brought us with that purpose of complementing one another. So in other words, I'm saying, as women, maybe we cannot win this war alone. And we need to bring men on board. And we need to let them know that they are stakeholders. Because these are the people who sometimes propagate this violence. And if we don't talk to them, if we don't show them the harm that is causing in the society, then they will continue driving on that, thinking maybe this is the only way to solve their problem. And also, I would also want to say that most of the campaign has been done leaving the men and boys out. We have left them out. We have empowered women. We have encouraged them. And we have labeled these men as our enemies. As much as they are the people who have been causing this violence to women, I think they can change their attitude. I think we bring them on board and show them that they are stakeholders. that we are fighting a war, because GBV, gender-based violence, is not helping anyone. Gender-based violence cannot solve any problem. I think we have from experience. Culturally, there are people who knows that the only way to discipline their spouse is by beating. And we have also realized that that never changes anything. It never changes anything. So people need to change and look for other options of dealing. Can we sit on a table and maybe discuss? Are there any other mechanism of solving our problem? Especially now in Kenya, what has been happening is that there is a lot of killing to college female students. It's like every week or every day in the news, a university student was killed, maybe in our own house or in boyfriend's house. And this is becoming too much. And I'm asking myself, can these young men have a different way of solving this matter? Is it only that they can revenge through killing? Can they have a dialogue? Can they maybe involve somebody else? Can a counselor maybe comes in and try to reconcile them? So those are some of the questions that we are asking ourselves and ask, what can we do? So we need to talk to these people. We need to talk to men and tell them, this is not how God maybe created us to live. He created us to live in harmony. He created us to complement each other. He created us so that we can help one another. And so this kind of information need to be put to men so that they understand that women are not our enemies. And also on the other side, women and girls should also learn that this is not, men are not our enemy. Maybe it's because they are short of options, like when it comes to discussing land issue or any other matter, maybe they are quick to start fighting and whatever. But maybe you could come up with a different option of approaching those ideas. And it worked. We initially, yes.
If I may ask.
Yes.
From the perspective of men, boys, do men see this as a problem, or primarily it is viewed as a women's problem? Because when we say men and women have been left behind, possibly, can we interrogate who has left them behind? What are men doing, possibly men of your caliber, who are on the same page with where the understanding of the problem is? What are they doing? Because literally we see women organizations, women's rights organizations have been at the forefront to provide information to women, to provide shelters to women, to go to policymakers to look for laws. How come the men now so they are left behind? Who is responsible? Those are some of the questions that when it comes to this subject that I battle with.
Yeah, I think we are all responsible. As a church, we are responsible. The governments are responsible. The women movement are responsible. We are all responsible. And when I say men are left behind, it's in terms of information. Women have been so much empowered, they know their rights. But then on the other side, men are not educated. Men are not, they are not, this information has not been shared with them, especially some of the consequences when they use violence to solve their problems. You see, you can get what you want through violence, but then think of that person that you are beaten. How will you continue living together? You are maybe affected alive in one way or the other. And so that's why we're saying, maybe in terms of sharing the information, we also need to bring men on board, because as you say, women have been so much trained. Women have been so much sensitized that this is our right. We need to do this. We need to be assertive. On the other side, men have not been maybe informed on how to start behaving, on how maybe to live in harmony with their spouses or with their daughters. Men, I think men also, they're also seeing that there is a problem, because When my daughter is maybe beaten by the husband, then I'm also grieved. It's painful. Even when she comes home with a solid body and say that I was beaten by the husband. So they are also feeling. It's only sometimes they don't know how to behave or how to go about it. Because maybe when a man is dealing with his wife, maybe that is a material, maybe to beat or to punish. But then when it comes to your daughter or your mother being beaten by your father, you see, it changes. You may pretend it's paining, but back at your mind, you don't like it. You don't enjoy that kind of a situation. A home where there is a lot of fighting, children don't grow well because they grow with a lot of fear. Our daughters start hating marriages because they see like maybe whoever will marry them will also beat them. But when a family is brought up in a harmony, then people will be happy even to get married, to interact, boys and girls. So that kind of information that I am saying, it needs to be shared with the men so that they can also see the benefits of what we are doing. That whatever we are doing is not only benefiting women, but in long run, it's going to benefit the society.
Okay, as a community development worker that I've done over the past years, many, many years.
Yeah.
How can male traditional and religious leaders impactfully engage in activism against the elimination of violence against women? Because when you look at spaces where easily information is shared, in churches, you find men missing. In schools, at meetings, you find men missing.
Yes.
At funerals, you find men missing. So in your experience as a senior pastor, how can, on the side of religion, traditional leaders, and also what are those men's spaces that they could be targeted?
Yeah. Again, when men are given responsibility and when men are told you are the people to help us in this area, they normally come out and really help. We had I had an experience that in one of our county, Narok County in Kenya, we had a program on FGM, and we reached a point whereby we said, if we continue fighting FGM alone as a church or as a government, we will never succeed. So we brought in the cultural men, the cultural chief, and the chief, and all the community leaders. And we sat together and we said, this is what FGM is causing to our daughters. And we were able to take them through the training. In fact, we shared one of the videos that was taken in Ethiopia, and it was really touching. And they saw practically what happened. And after that, they said, no, this is going to stop. And you know, in most of the society, men are respected. They have a higher hand. They have a voice. So if that
they have the power.
So if that voice of men can be used positively, I know a lot of things may change. So in that community, after men had taken over and said, no, we are now the people who are going to fight with the FGM. I think now the FGM rate there is so low because the men have already taken over. They have seen the harm, the harm that it causes to our daughters. And also, at the same time, we did that even to young men, the students in schools. And we started telling them, no, we need to fight, all of us, men and women, we need to fight against FGM. And the men and the boys in school bought the idea. And you know, there are so many misconceptions and a lot of lies that they were told culturally, that a lady who is not circumcised has this and that. And we were able to deal with those lies and clear. And now the boys were even appreciating, and they made a decision that when my time comes to marry, I will marry an uncircumcised girl. So that changed the attitude and some of the beliefs that they had. So you're saying it's possible even for this. Men only need to be involved, and they need to be called and told, this is where we are. Our children are suffering, our girls are suffering, our women are suffering, and we need to join our hands and fight this monster. And I know they will come in, they can come in and help. From experience, I've seen that.
Okay, so thank you, Senior Pastor John Sandera. very, very candid on the issue of the collective voice, that it's not a women's fight, but men are equally responsible and should be brought on board. That we shouldn't just look at them as protagonists or puppet waiters, but rather as part of the solution to solve a problem. Positive masculinity, you have emphasized, and how power can be used positively. Let us target boys in schools and communities for us to be able to consolidate the achievements, but further reduce or eliminate violence against women and girls. I would like to land Neoma Alberta Benson. Are you here now?
Maybe before that, maybe I could add something.
Okay, please go ahead.
On the side of the church, sorry, on the side of the church, all these things also need to be preached in our churches. We need to tell members, our church members, our congregants, to stop, because these things are also happening in the churches. And church and religious, has there before been example? If you can use those platforms to fight, because like in a church, the Bible is against this violence. The Bible recognizes the rights of women. So everything is in the Bible. So if we can use the Bible properly, so we can also mitigate, we can win this war. So in the church, a lot also need to be done. But then they also need to be, the pastors, the priests need also to be sensitized that this is a problem. You know, there are people who are there, they are driving on their own ways, but they don't know we have a big problem. Maybe they have not come to that area of identifying that this is a big need in our society.
So we might need to target the theological schools.
Yes.
Where these pastors are trained. And also the counseling in churches. Because the Bible, one verse I understand best, the Bible says that husbands love your wives as Jesus loved the church. And Jesus died for the church.
Yes.
You know, what acts do you do that tantamount to Jesus dying for the church?
Yeah. We have even a good example of some ladies in the book of Numbers who went to Moses, and they claim, because they were not to get the inheritance, and they claimed the inheritance on behalf of their father. And the Bible, in fact, said that Moses consulted the Lord, and God told him, yeah, these girls are right. Give them what belongs to their father. So we also need the women in the church, because in the church, most of the time we have also, they have been told to submit and whatever. Maybe they need also to be preach on being assertive, like the girls that we have in the Bible.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let me invite Neoma. Are you here now?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, nice to meet you. Yes, Neoma, earlier on, I read your profile in your absentia, but I'm happy to do it again. Neoma is a refugee lawyer, a serial entrepreneur with several years of multifaceted award-winning experience. And she offers a lot in the career, in the non-profit leadership and international human rights law. And she's the founder and president of Women and Child Care Foundation, established in Nigeria in 2009. So tell us now, from your experience so far of leading the group and as an activist, how do you think activists or movements should organize themselves to have a better influence on policy, practice on violence against women and girls, to avoid working in silos?
Thank you very much, Rita. This is a very interesting topic. So I would say that everything that we have learned about eliminating violence against women and girls. And I'm probably going to be echoing a lot of what Reverend Sandera has said, because everything that we have learned about eliminating violence against women and girls tells us that, you know, the most profound changes arise when we work not only with the women and girls who are affected, but also with the people and structures around them that can support or undermine the struggle. So it is important, and we have also learned that we are not eliminating violence against women and girls is not the purview of any single actor. So it's not the purview of any single organization, it's not the purview of any single individual. It is a collective responsibility. Therefore, it actually requires networking, collaboration, and support from every stakeholder. And this actually involves not only the women's group themselves, but with the structures, policies, people, stakeholders around them. And when we are talking about eliminating violence against women and girls, for instance, we are talking about, you know, providing legal aid, ensuring that any woman who is abused or faces any form of violence or abuse gets the justice that they need. And also it ensures that we are able to sensitize the society, we're able to sensitize people, we're able to make sure that we have laws and policies that are against violence, violent perpetrators. So by this, what do we mean? We mean that it means that the government has to be involved. It means that religious leaders have to be involved. It means that cultural leaders have to be involved. It means that law enforcement has to be involved. It means that every individual has to be involved. Because if I am not aware that something is happening in my neighbor's house, for instance, I will not be able to blow the whistle, or I will just think that, okay, this is something normal. I'll give an instance. In Nigeria, prior to 2015, when a man beats his wife and probably she goes to report at the police station, the police will dismiss it as a family matter. And they'll say, oh, go home and sort your problems. Until we got a law enforcement officer, we got an inspector general of police who was gender sensitive. And when he came, he was able to create gender units in the police force. And that influence, for instance, was able to get the police officers to know that someone beating his wife was not just a family matter, it was a violence against another person. And also that was actually what triggered, you know, the violence against person bills. And this was actually what started getting it. People started getting sensitized. Different states started ratifying the violence against person bills. And, you know, all of that, the advocacy grew from there. So if we're able to get the law enforcement agents involved in conversations like this, for instance, if you and women had this conversation and just had it amongst themselves, we will not have the privilege of getting a religious leader here speaking to us from his perspective, or somebody from government speaking to us from the perspective, somebody from the judiciary speaking to us. These are different perspectives, and this is the only way we can be able to create sustainable change. It is the only way we're able to actually ensure that our policies and our programs are not limited in scope and longevity. So it is actually important that every stakeholder is involved. So we are not able to work in silos at all. We are not able to work alone. We can only work together. Therefore, there is need for us to strengthen collaborations, to build networks, be able to listen to Reverend and say, yes, he's right. It's not just a women affair. In the past, when you come to, you know, events like CSW, for instance, you see just women, but it got to a point where we started seeing a lot of men in participation. And that has actually helped. That was how we got to have the he for she movements. that have actually helped to tell men, and we have had men who are now carrying on the message. So it's no longer business as usual. It's no longer, oh, this is a thing for women. This is just how women gather to say this and that. It has actually triggered a lot of conversations in places that it hadn't been before. So the need to strengthen collaborations and the need to be able to reach out to every stakeholder is the only way we are able to influence policies, is the way we're able to influence individuals, the relationships, the structures around eliminating violence against women and girls. Thank you.
Simply unites activism to end violence against women and girls. I think it is coming out very, very strongly because already the statistics still remain very high. And as Amin said, in Sudan, for instance, they feel they are not even captured. 736 million women, almost 1 in 3 around the world, being subjected to physical, sexual, intimate partner violence and non-partner violence. That is not something to sit on and watch, but rather to gather our energies and act. But also we must acknowledge that whereas almost 160 countries have passed laws on domestic violence, some of these laws don't necessarily are not positive to respond to the international standards and recommendations. Actually, some are irretrogressive. And over 144 have laws on sexual harassment in employment. But how they are enforced also still remains to be realized. Issues to do with budget, the gender and equity budgeting that helps us to be able to allocate funds, because we can have these laws, but when they are not implemented, it can also remain a gap that we need to fill to make sure that justice is achieved, like you have rightly put it, Naomi. Yes, can we now give an opportunity to you, the panelists, if you might have any follow-up questions that you might want to raise or comments by show of hand in the chat. You raise your hand and then I'll be able to know that you have got something to supplement on the discussion. It's a dialogue. Yes, Honorable Ava. Honorable, please go ahead. Or was it a hand by mistake?
No, it was not by mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not by mistake. I actually sought the floor. I'm just trying to get the video back. Sorry. Yes, I was just trying to get the video back. It was not by mistake. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. And thanks to my colleagues for very insightful perspectives. I just want to agree with the young woman who spoke, the young lawyer from Zambia, for all the work she's doing. And she brought out the strategic place that young people occupy in handling matters, you know, that affect them. The need for ownership by young people, the need for their own kind of communication strategy. I could not agree more, because they trust themselves, they trust one another. There's that peer-to-peer influence where you hear from someone of your age, you know, speaking on issues that affect you. So they are able to influence one another greatly. And so I agree with her. They need to communicate these things in their own language. But of course, it brings about the aspect of education on what the key issues are. It's possible for her to understand, it's possible for the next person to understand. But then we have young people there in the rural communities, you know, and the intersections of illiteracy at that level are also very important. So I would just urge that, you know, they reach out more and more and more to people in the rural communities. the strength of youth can never be
Honorable
underrated.
Abba,
Yes.
Honorable, what would you have to say about persons with disabilities? We are all saying everybody should be brought on board. How about children with disabilities? How can we empower them, especially the girl child, to be part of the movement? How can they understand better these languages that we are speaking?
Okay, well, in the first place, like my first comment had also come from a point of recognition as a first step. They need to be recognized in the first place. Once again, we don't have very strong data and background on children with disabilities. But now, women groups and activism can engage activism to bring more focus on children living with disabilities, especially girls living with disabilities. And so there is the need, first of all, to find out where they are, who they are, to be able to identify them, and then design programs, that are friendly to them, that are disability friendly and disability.
Yeah, but do you realize that even us as we are seated here, we are at fault? Do we have sign language? No.
No, we don't. Yeah, like
Yeah.
the child rights, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, you know, drawing inspiration from the Child Rights Convention, of course, talks about the right to development of children. And so the children have a right to development, and where children are burdened with disability, there is a need to still grant them access to development, but taking into consideration their state of disability. And so there has to be a lot of emphasis on specialized, inclusive education. That really needs to go into the budget. It really needs to be go into the budget and be regulated as a matter of right. And so there has to be the sign languages, there has to be issues of children who are suffering from, who are deaf and dumb, children who are suffering from visual hearing impairments and mobility impairments. There has to be obligation, responsibility from government, and then
Okay.
responsibility from actors. There just has to be. And
Thank
then,
you.
okay.
Just 1 minute, yeah.
Uh, okay, yeah, I also wanted to say we have to, in the private sector, let me put it that way, there is need to create disability-friendly environments, and this can be achieved through awareness creation in our communities to be able to deal with issues of stigmatization, prejudices, so that families that have children who have disabilities do not face this sense of shame. They work towards removing the barriers, that prevent their children from active participation. And I would just lastly say that many countries in Africa, for instance, have already engaged the social protection projects or initiatives. I would recommend that, in doing the mapping for this, disability should be identified as one of the indicators for vulnerability, so that families who are burdened with disabled children and also with poverty are well identified for support as an obligation on states.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But I think we need to commit, starting with ourselves who are here and the organizers behind the scenes, that it starts with us. Persons with disabilities. We don't have sign language here. For starters, that could be something we could start with. Can you ask if you're going for a meeting? If I'm moderating a meeting like this one, can I be aware enough to say, how are we reaching out to the persons with disabilities on this very platform that we are on? Any other comments? Rebecca, for the young people, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes. What message do you have for policymakers in line with ending violence against women and participation of young women in policy processes? Full participation.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say it's the way to go. We need women to, young women to also be part of just the inclusiveness in itself. will bring out better results, unlike the way it has been traditionally. We've had policies that have never really been implemented. So maybe one of the things I would bring out clearly is when they're making the policies, how much research do they do? The inclusiveness of just involving people that are really, really affected by some of these things. I believe it's the same everywhere globally, because here in Zambia, we have people that make policies, but if you come to ask me, I would think some of the things are done through research that has not really been brought to the core. I think Honorable mentioned earlier to say, what are you doing about the rural areas? These are some of the things I'm trying to bring across, to say policies are made without really involving the people that are affected. So we'll have a policy that will try and protect women or children, but still not effective because it does not carry the voice. So I learned something in community mobilization and engagement. It is always important to not leave the stakeholders. And in this case, the people of Zambia, the women that are supposed to be the ones that are supposed to be beneficiaries of the policies that are set. To start with, I think you did mention to say only a few women are in positions of authority. It's the same situation here in Zambia. We have more men than women in parliament. So how then do we expect a stronger voice from women? So I think it starts from the aspect of also allowing women to take up strategic positions in order for us to have proper policies that will come and work in favor of women or girls and children. So at the end of the day, the question is, the policymakers that are sitting in those strategic areas, how much information do they have in order for them to speak on behalf of the masses? How much information are they digging in? How many people have been called to just come in and become a voice to the masses that are out there? Because if I go in parliament today, I must be well informed. So the issue that is coming in is that young women sometimes are left out. The policies are made, but they're traditional and have been traditional for a very long time. The holistic approach must be that women, young women must be included even in the policy making. I think beyond sitting in parliament and having the parliamentarians sitting down and making those decisions, is it possible to also include young women, independent, away from the strategic positions that they have, to come in also and implement? Here in Zambia, we have caucus meetings away from parliament, where parliamentarians sit with other people, but I have never really had an experience where parliamentarians in their caucuses have invited young women to come and speak from their informed point of view. So there's this gap that has been existing for a very long time. So the implementation has been from the traditional aspect, the holistic the aspect that we've been working time in and in memorial. So there's a lot that has been missing. So I feel from my point of view, policymakers must also include young women. You need a voice. You need to hear, how much research are you doing? How much do you know about what's needed? What is really affecting girls? Because we've been in and out speaking about the same things. We have a policy for women here. We have, we also have laws to this effect. We have the Gender-Based Violence Act. But if you look at it, it's just an act that is bringing out the laws, but there are a lot of gaps that are still existing. So I believe policymakers need to just go beyond what they're doing now. Parliamentarians begin to engage the right people, the people that are actually on the ground, that really know what's going on. I think I'll submit and I'll end here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. To say, can we have spaces open to young women? But also, may I add that, can young women also reach out? You know, the table that we sit at, sometimes you might be blinded to deal with those who appear, but also young women to identify these spaces and be able to ask for space. I am here, can I be listened to? So that as they solicit for others, you have also been able to present yourselves. But I couldn't emphasize it any better than you did. Amina, are you there? You earlier on were showing signals of contribution. Amina, it's very important to hear from you. What advice do you give to young activists regarding how to build advocacy campaigns that are impactful at policy level, considering the circumstances you earlier on highlighted? patriarchy being ingrained, power lies totally in the hands of men, women not being able to make decisions. It would be nice to hear from you. Maybe I will come back to you a bit later. I mean, Senior Pastor John Sandera.
Reverend, you're muted.
I'm saying I want to react to a point that was given by Honorable Abagaba in her first presentation. She mentioned the importance of giving the people who have maybe gone through abuse a voice to speak out what they have been going through, the survivors. And I totally agree with that. But then on the other hand, I was also thinking it's also important for us to showcase success stories. We have cases of people who really took this gospel, maybe putting it in our own perspective, or who took this initiative and they changed the community or changed the society, or could we even have men who initially were abusive, but maybe after being sensitized or going through a creation of awareness, maybe they change. Because sometimes we may dwell so much on the negative until we don't see the success. We have success stories from what, since maybe this initiative was started by UN and other agents, other movements. What are the fruits? Are there fruit to celebrate? Maybe these are things that also we need to see in our life, because if we just come up with the negative side, then people will see that it's a big war that can never be won. But when we have some gains that we can celebrate, everybody will say, yeah, this is the way forward. This is what we need to do. I mean, we need also to have like benchmarking of a society that has really worked out and are living well, the wellness in that community. The girls are celebrating, women are okay, they're peaceful, they are going on with their work without any interference. So that was my concern, that let's not dwell so much on the positive, but also let's bring in the positive aspect and also come up with success stories so that people can see that we are moving. We are not where we used to be in 1984. At least some steps has been made. A lot of effort has been brought in, a lot of resources has been used. And so we need to have also opportunity to celebrate this success.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor, but also to recognize that violence mutates. Like we hear about mutations of viruses, but I think also human behavior mutates. And one of those is violence against women and girls.
Yes.
Today we are back into the modern slavery, trafficking, happening right, left, and center in Uganda. First with the situation of the girls that are going to do domestic work in some of the countries where the situations have become so dire. Of course, others go through right channels, others sneak through borders, but it doesn't matter how they get there. But the issue is that their rights are being violated left, right, and center. And that is exacerbating gender-based violence in its highest forms, some of which we may have never seen, including, you know, the issue to do with the extraction of the organs from their bodies. We talk about cybercrime. My sister Rebecca was talking about using social media and how to create awareness. But today we are faced with, you know, huge instances of cyber harassment. In Uganda, we even had a full woman member of parliament. And I don't think she even regained her seat because society views it if you speak out. She was able to speak out, she went to courts of law, but I bet that worked against her. Instead of looking at the perpetrator or the person who committed the crime, the guns are turned on to women. So we also need to be cognizant. How is this vice changing? And how can we also be able to change our strategies, to change our communication mechanisms, to be able to continue targeting communities? Naomi? What would you advise young activists regarding how to build advocacy campaigns that are impactful at policy level? Neoma, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
Sorry, can you take the question again?
In your experience and developing the right connections, platform to make voices heard, what would you advise to young activists regarding how to build advocacy campaigns that are impactful, including at policy level?
Yes, thank you very much. That is actually very important because as we'll see, most young activists, we are very passionate, and we come with so much passion, and we come with so much zeal. And most importantly, the first thing I would say that we need to, have at the back of our minds is actually, who are we working with as activists? So most importantly, we need to know exactly, we need to be the right people. We need to work under the right people, and we need to be able to work with informed data. So that, when there are certain people or certain places, like approaching the legislature and approaching the executive arms of government, they want to know that you're not just speaking in the area of, a young person, but you're also informed. So they want to be able to know that you're coming with a lot of information, and they want to be able to know that you're coming with data. And they also want to know that you are able to stay, because sometimes they say, oh, young people, that we just, we're here and there. So they want to be able to know that we are coming with sustainable vision. So that is the reason why we need to lay our plans straight. We need to move around the network, and sometimes we have mentors. As young activists, we have mentors in different organizations that are already doing work that we intend to do, and that will actually help us to get a leg in the door, because most times accessibility is an issue. So for us to be able to get a leg in the door, we have to be able to work with people who are already there, work with existing structures and existing organizations, so that we are not trying to reinvent the wheel sometimes. And this will actually help us to, be able to, I remember as a young activist coming up, I had a lot of ideas and I had a lot of things in my head, but I was not able to reach the particular people who I wanted to reach until I was able to start to work with certain people who were already existing, certain organizations who were already existing. And by using that as a leg in the door, I was able to come to the table of certain people. I was able to make some contributions on the table of certain people who were already existing, and they were able to say, oh, you need to meet this young lady. So they were able to speak my name in rooms where I didn't have access to. So, and that is how it is important for us to be able to work with people who already have the structure. So as a young activist, I will always say that try to, collaborate with people, try to network with people who have the structure, so that they can be able to, take your message to places that you are not able to reach. And maybe there they can now say, oh, I think you really need to listen to Norma. I think you really need to get to listen to Rebecca, because I've heard her speak and I think she has a lot to offer. So that is what I will actually tell young activists. Collaboration is very important. Networking is very important. And mentorships, they are very important to be able to propagate.
Just before you go, you mentioned that the young people need to identify the right people to work with. Can you say just a little bit in that 1 minute? What did you exactly mean?
So what I meant is that the right people to work with, for instance, is if we are building structures around eliminating violence against women and girls, there are already existing organizations, for instance, in different countries, and there are already existing people, stakeholders who are working in that sector. And I think identifying with them is the first step. Because when you are able to identify with these organizations, for instance, some grassroots organizations, we need to anchor and identify with people who are already working in those areas. Because sometimes we may have a lot of vision and a lot of objective, but it will be very limited in scope if we're not able to attach ourselves with people who are already doing work in that area. And we're able to come to a round table with these people and let them know where we're coming from, let them hear our vision, and we can all collaborate and work together. So that's actually what I mean by identifying organizations and people working in that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Naoma, for those brilliant ideas. Together to unite to be able to end violence against women. Yes, I'm trying to reach out to the chat to see if I have a hand up. Amin, are you there? Amin El Maldi.
Yes. I'm here.
Yes, yes. Earlier on, I was trying to give you an opportunity to be able to share with us that how can you, what tips would you give young women to be able to organize advocacy better, especially in the situations that you are faced with, and how they could work side by side for strengthened voice and a call for action and accountability?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I would like to what has Noema said, networking. Networking and collaboration is essential for young activists. But from our experience in Sudan, I would like to give like not advice, but kind of sharing of information. That young activists should like open communication with other women groups. In Sudan, we have always young women always complain that they are secluded from this women work. Other women groups are dominating. They cannot find opportunities. But I think if the young activists can open this kind of communication, trying to collaborate or networking with other women groups to make use of their experiences, because they have experiences, and to work together as women groups, okay, to address or advocate all for our issues of concern. Okay, because the activists have like this spirit of being young, and other women groups, they have experience and they have maybe accumulation of information of other cases. They can benefit from it. Not to work in separation, or like to have this separate work and just criticize the other women groups or women organizations. We have to open this intergenerational dialogue to make this very big movement of women, because in our context, what we are facing as a women, young or not young, it is the same. We know that young maybe have their own problem they are facing, sometimes very special context, but at the end, we are as a women, we have to work together, okay? Because each part, young and not young, or they have their own advantages. So we make use of this, what is available to us as the women are not available of advantages to young, and make kind of networking to work together in order we can all we have pressurized to ensure that our movement as a women is going to achieve what we are aiming for. So in this situation, we know that some young activists, maybe they have their own concern. They have their own issues that you think that other women groups are not aware of it, or they are not going to accommodate it. But I think at the end, I think we are going to have a same achievement. We are going to have a very big and very strengthening movement to achieve what we are all aiming for. So the collaboration, the coordination and networking, trying to create coalitions with each other and have this kind of sharing experience, but it's very important. Yeah, you know, our context is very difficult to advocate.
1 minute. Okay. Yes? No, I was appealing to you to wind up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, as I said, we're in a situation. We're in a situation as an African women. We need to network with each other. This is
okay.
To put our priorities, to put our common agenda, and trying to advocate for us as movement.
Thank you very much, Amina, from where you are at. And I think as we come almost to the end, I want you to think about one key recommendation that you would like to leave with us, but you will also carry forward to be able to share it with us. But I also would want to talk about the Unite campaign that has been championed by the Secretary General for 2022, Unite Activism to End Violence Against Women and Girls, where governments are being called upon and partners across the world to show their solidarity to women's rights movements and activists through increasing long-term funding and support to women's rights organizations to be able to work on effective solutions, to also resist the rollback on women's rights, amplify voices of feminist women movement in the diversity, and to mobilize more actors. I think we spoke to that very well. Let us mobilize more actors to join the movement to end violence against women, from men, from PWDs, religious leaders, cultural institutions, private sector, mention it, to be able to come on board, to promote the leadership and participation of women and girls in political, policymaking, and decision-making spaces. We had it, although Amina may have highlighted it, but we equally share it across the globe, that women have lesser decision-making power. So we need to keep working on it, to bring them to the table, to be able to make these decisions in development, in humanitarian and peace processes. Peace is very, very critical because we are faced with so many crises of insecurity around the world. Strengthen protection mechanisms to prevent and eliminate harassment, threats, intimidation, and discrimination against women human rights defenders and women's rights advocates. I also would like to use this opportunity to thank UN Women for the programs across the globe. We know about the programs with the Spotlight Initiative specifically, where over 650,000 women and girls have been provided with GBV services, both men, boys, girls, inclusive, without any discrimination. And this has rolled out across several countries. We know about the UN Trust Fund that supports grassroots civil society organizations to be able to do work. You know about the campaign for 16 days of activism. UN Women is entirely behind it, supporting programs to end female genital mutilation, supporting programs to end trafficking of women. And we must recognize that now on the table, we have climate change. Climate change is a very dynamic that has come on board that we equally need to see interventions stretched there. It degrades the environment, causes displacement, water scarcity, food insecurity. So we cannot sleep. We must continue to put our efforts together to make sure that we build activism that is geared towards ending violence against women. And activism starts with you at family level, at community level, national level, global levels, so that it is a chain of jointed efforts. I now would like to give you 30 seconds, each of my dear panelists, starting with Honorable Ava Gafar to give your parting shot. Honorable, go ahead.
Yes, thanks for this opportunity. My comment will cut across all comments made by everybody, especially from Neoma, who talks about the influence that a one-time head of the police had, you know, on reducing issues of violence. And so I would say there is need to have mentors, to have champions, to engage champions in this area, people of influence who can affect government, who can affect policy, who can affect the communities, and who can affect all the sectors of society to speak against violence against women and girls, who can provide mentorship, who can provide influence, people of influence. Let us borrow a leaf from the African Union Commission, which has a panel of the wise made up of 5 people of influence to advise the AUC on matters of conflict, on preventative measures to be taken. Let us have champions and influencers among us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ava. Yes, who next? Please just pop up. We have all been in this space. I don't need to call your name. Just take up the space.
Okay, my parting shot is that nobody should be left behind on this campaign. We should all join this campaign, women and girls, men and boys. None of us should be left behind. When God created Adam and Eve, put them in the Garden of Eden, the aim was not for them to compete against one another, but the aim was for them to complement one another. I wish we could continue the same, whereby men are complementing women and women are complementing men, so that we don't have that, so we can reduce that conflict among us. So let's aim to complement one another, as we even borrow from the psychosocial support concept, whereby it's about the well-being of each one of us. And I appeal to men that they should also come up and support women so that they can live well and in harmony with everybody within the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 1 minute, 1 minute. Amin, are you there?
Okay, I think what we need is to do as women movement to reach as much as we could to women in different parts in our country and our context, to ensure that there is active engagement of women, especially that women in rural area, women at community level. Because they are not aware. They are not aware about what is the rights, what is human rights, what is gender, what is, and all these issues. They are not aware of the rights. So we need, as women, to reach those women and to ensure that they would have knowledge and skills of leadership, have knowledge of what is human rights, to educate them by their rights, to join the women, to create this strengthened women movement, so we can advocate to have end this gender-based violence and violence against women within our community. Unless we reach these women and trying to educate them and make them aware of their rights, I think we are, as a civil society, at this level of this organization, we cannot have or can achieve anything. So we need to create strength. We have to reach and bring as much as women to join this movement, and then we can advocate together. Also to create this movement, feminist movement across the African country, to support each other by kind of information, resources, or whatever, so that we can to create Pan-African feminist movement to ensure that we can end this gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Amin. Naoma, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So my last words, I would say, most importantly, for us to be able to strengthen collaborations, those of us at the higher level should be accessible. So keep your doors open. And so that when people come knocking, when the young activists come knocking, and when people who are coming up in efforts, advocacy efforts come knocking, that they will be able to have access to you. So I recommend that each of us at our own levels where we have advanced to should be able to connect with those who are still coming up and those who are still trying to build, especially from the grassroots. We should be able to keep our doors open, and we should also be able to tailor some of our programs and to reach the unreached. And also for those who are coming up and young people who are coming up, to also try to always connect with those, like I said earlier, who are already up there. And by so doing, we can have that synergy and we can be able to work together, leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Naoma. And last but not least, Rebecca, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. In my conclusion, just a rider on what Naomi has said, I would just add that we also speak one voice. Even in as much as we are in different countries, I believe we are facing the same challenges. So if we're going to advocate for policy change, if we're going to advocate for a law change, if we're going to advocate for a different way in which we should do things, at least we must meet each other halfway. Because we could be in the same country, Zambia, but Rebecca is advocating for a stiffer punishment for perpetrators. Maybe this other advocate is advocating for a change of law. This other advocate is advocating in a different direction. I believe we're not going to make impact that way. Can we work gradually? So maybe in as much as we are in different countries, can we have the same voice? Can we speak on one thing, one at a time, so that at that point we may build and get results? That's my conclusion. I submit. Thank you.
What a beautiful way to close. Thank you very much. That we need to reach each other halfway geographically, by gender. Don't parent in advocacy, but try to understand how young people do behave. And violence against women is just not a women's problem, but it's a society problem. And therefore, men should come forward as part of the solutions, engage champions to affect policy at all levels. I would want to thank you all and to thank UN Women for continuing to provide platforms and organizing the 16 days of activism, giving a chance to celebrate both leaders who have together taken powerful strands against gender-based violence. I do thank you all for your time, for your contributions, and may you remain blessed and free and healthier from gender-based violence. Ciao.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Asante. Thank you. Nice.
You're
meeting you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Asante.
Fiona, I work
Zikomo,
in
Zikomo.
Nigeria too.